you ask him if he knows any stories about Americans over there, prisoners of war?
คนรู้จักพวกอเมริกันได้ไหมเป็นคนอเมริกัน
I can say to you.
He cannot say that. Do not say.
Off the camera, can he say to us?
Huh?
If we don't record it, if we don't film it, can he tell us?
I'm afraid to come in.
Oh, he's afraid to come in.
But he knows the name and he knows the name and he called him KGB of American. He can.
Okay. Thai จริงๆ Okay. He said that the KGB from Russia are the ones persecuting and killing the Christians.
How many Russians?
เมื่อกี้เจ้าประมาณรัสเซียประมาณกี่คนที่นั่นประมาณเท่าไหร่ประมาณเท่าไหร่ประมาณเท่าไหร่
แต่เขาสับเปลี่ยนกระเทียมเดียก
ประมาณเท่าไหร่
ประมาณบอลผมเห็ดอันเขาเฮียนอยู่นี่ประมาณ10 กว่าคน
In one town there are 10
KGB agents?
But they change.
But they move from one place to another.
As we stood along the banks of the Mekong River, we glanced across into Laos, wondering about the condition of our American prisoners of war left behind there. We had hoped upon coming to Nakhon Phanom we'd meet a Laotian refugee who could give us word of their conditions. As we stood there looking, we began to hear someone whistling the tune to Jesus Paid It All. He whistled for a moment and stopped. I picked it up for just a short time and stopped, and then he picked it up again. Sitting just a few feet away from us was a born-again Christian who had swam across the Mekong to get away from the communist tyranny there. We've shown you a little bit of him, but we've had to distort his face for his own protection and that of his parents still left behind in Laos. And though he wasn't very eager to talk about American prisoners of war, he was more than happy to tell us about the condition of Christians in Laos who suffer at the hands of the communists, particularly the KGB. I hope you'll listen as he tells the rest of this story. What do they do to people, to Christians, when they find out you're a Christian?
ถ้าสมมติว่าเขารู้ว่าเป็นคริสเตียนนะแล้วเขาทำอะไรอ่ะ
เขารู้ว่าเขาเป็นคริสเตียนเขาปฏิบัติ
They forbid them to tell people that they are Christians. เขาข่มเหงมั้งเขาแบบมันเขาฆ่าใช่ไหม They persecuted them and sometimes they killed them.
What kind of persecution?
แบบไหนเขาข่มเหงแบบไหน
เขาข่มเหงแบบที่ว่าเขาเอาคนคริสเตียนนี่ไปเรียนอยู่ในบทเรียนของเขา
Oh, he said they arrest the Christians and put them in like a concentration camp where they have to listen, brainwash them about communist teaching.
I want to know, how did he get over here?
คุณมาได้ยังไงคุณมาได้ยังไงมาจากลาวเลยก็มาได้ยังไง
ลอยแม่น้ำโขง
Swam.
Hey, good swimmer, huh?
He swam across. จริงๆอ่ะนี่ก็ไม่มีใครจับอ่ะไม่มีใครจับ
Our appeal that
นปขจ้ะ
Huh?
นปข
Okay, he swam across, and then this patrol police took him and brought him to the refugee camp. I hope your father and your mother can come out. คุณอยากได้เป็นอย่างนี้ไหมอยากจะให้พ่อแม่ไหมมาทางนี้แล้วมั้ง
ว่าจะให้มาเพราะว่าอยู่ที่มันทุกข์หลาย
อะไรนะ
ผมว่าจะให้มาอยู่ที่ศูนย์มันทุกข์ยาก
He said he doesn't want his father and his mother to come
Why?
because it is very, very difficult. It's a difficult life in the refugee camp, very much.
What do the Christians need the most in Laos? Bibles,
Christian,
prayer?
พวกคริสเตียนที่ลาโอสเนี่ยต้องการอะไรมากเลย
ต้องการอันไบเบิล
พระคัมภีร์ You tell them in English they need Bible.
ในแต่วันเชิร์ชแผ่น
Christians ต้องการพระคัมภีร์มากใช่ไหมนี่ก็อะไรอีก
ก็เครื่องนุ่งห่ม
Oh, clothes. They
Close.
need clothes. They need Bibles.
We'll tell him we'll pray for his parents and for all the Christians in Laos.
อาจารย์บอกว่าเราจะอธิษฐานเพื่อคุณเด็กก็อธิษฐานสำหรับคนพ่อแม่ด้วย
And we'll ask the Christians in America to pray for them
เด็ก
too.
ก็อธิษฐานเพื่อพ่อ
As we flew over the rice paddies, preparing to land at Sakanakan's military airport in northeast Thailand, we were grateful that we were coming on a mission of peace instead of war. From this air base, countless American pilots flew out on bombing missions into Vietnam, many of them never to return. We came to Southeast Asia to bring God's love to the more than 100 million people that live in this region. To reach these people, it is necessary to go into the most remote villages of the hill tribes. As we entered into a village of the So tribe, Robert West, an American missionary and translator, explained the eagerness of these tribespeople to receive the Bible in their own language.
That's what they actually said. In fact, some of the old people come up to us and say, it's dead, it's all dead. I said, well, what's dead? He said, well, in the old days we had a book, it was written on leather, and the dog ate it. And the story is that when the book comes back, all our old ways, all our present religion and everything will pass away, and we'll take on the way of the book. And in the book will be about a city that, where there's no sickness and no death and everything in it. And a lot of the old people, when they see the book, they say it's come.
These are a people that have been ravaged by years of war and persecution. Most have left their homeland, Laos, for a life without communist domination. These children had never heard that there was a God who loved them. Wherever we went in this region, we were accompanied by soldiers, since they are still fighting with communist insurgents near these villages. These hill tribes still practice their ancient rituals and dances. John Nelms explains the meaning of a spirit dance we filmed, which is rarely seen by outsiders.
Among the religions of Asia is animism, which is a worship of departed spirits and demons who from time to time are reported to take the form of a tiger or a snake and roam through the villages. To date, the gospel has only been presented in 2 of the 50 So villages in Thailand and 1 in Laos. The rest believe themselves to be, in their words, stupid because they've lost the book about the Creator. Since they cannot live under His protection, they must appease these demon spirits. In order to appease them, the villagers gather together under the spirit tree to sacrifice a pig or chicken. If it is accepted, all goes well. If not, death and disease enter the village. Afterwards, wearing scarves around their waist for protection from the spirits, the elders dance in a circle to the beat of sticks on the wooden floor and the flute-like sound of the bamboo kereng. Eventually, at least one will become possessed, supposedly by the spirit of a dead animal or person, and take on a different personality. In this ceremony, we watched as this elderly woman became possessed, and under this spirit's influence, demonstrated the power of darkness which rules their lives by stamping out the fire with her bare feet.
The scriptures say, "How shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? Most of these people had never heard the message of God's forgiveness. The Buddhist governor of this region allowed us to preach and show a film on the life of Jesus. As a result, there were many who wanted to know this Jesus and to receive him. Yet there are still many villages and towns where this Jesus is still unknown. The scriptures go on to ask, how shall they preach unless they are sent? Your caring is what enables this work to preach the gospel in these areas.
If you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, the Messiah, then you should ask him for forgiveness. You don't have to burn candles because he is the light of the world.
We were grateful to the Thai representative of Campus Crusade for allowing us to use the motion picture Jesus while there. In the 2 evenings we showed it, sometimes in the rain, over 1,000 people came out to watch the story of the life of Jesus. It was interesting to watch their reaction at the motion picture, the joy that was in their faces when Jesus would talk with a child, the amazement they had over his power to cast the demons out of the maniac at Gadara, but also to see how they were visibly moved at the sufferings of Jesus when he was nailed to the cross. Well, they couldn't understand how such a good man would suffer so. Surely his karma was better than that. The Buddhist doctrine of karma teaches that our sufferings or pleasures of this life are directly related to how we lived in our past life. They thought Jesus must have been a terrible man in the past to have to suffer so now. But it was an opportunity for us to explain to them that Jesus did not die for the sins of himself, but for the sins of the world. This wasn't real hard for them to understand because Buddha himself had taught that someday the Messiah would come. He was called the Pratmahatai. And Buddha said that when he comes, he'll be the Savior of the whole world. His followers said, how will we know him when he comes? And he said, you'll recognize him by the wounds in his hands and in his feet. So when the scene of the resurrection of Jesus came about, the people were amazed to see him come out of the tomb and show the wounds in his hands and feet. And because of this teaching, many of them that night turned from the teachings of Buddha, the enlightened one, to the teaching of Jesus Christ, the very light of God. His face is inescapable, as in this shrine called the Reclining Buddha, which is 90 feet long and 4 stories high. Here, covered in gold, he has laid for over 600 years, and the millions who have knelt before him here have lived without knowledge of Christ and died without hope. Since they are unaware of their hopelessness, they go on in vain, living to appease the spirits, burning incense and buying gold leaf to put on the idols. They kneel and pray to forms which have eyes and ears, but can neither see nor hear. This tragedy of hopelessness is seen no place more clearly than in its successful indoctrination of children and youth to its philosophy, which requires all males to serve for a time as a priest, and all females to live in subjugation and in disgrace. From the temples, called Wats, the people return to their homes, always guarded by the gnats or demon spirits which live in their spirit houses. Here they daily place food and water, flowers and money to appease these spirits and bribe them for health and protection. We were invited to visit a public school in central Thailand where our team learned that physical blindness often accompanies spiritual blindness. Up until now, blind children in Thailand have lived without an education or training. But recently, a Thai Braille alphabet was developed by Christian ministries to educate their country's 200,000 blind children. The teachers and program director, all being Christians, have now been invited into communist Laos to establish a similar program there. But in the meantime, a daily witness for Christ is presented in the love shown by the teachers, not only to the blind, but also to the thousands of seeing children in these Buddhist schools, whose hope is in the doctrine or dharma of Buddha. But our hope, which we shared, was accepted by these ladies who were brought to a service for the blind by a blind friend. In testimony, one of them said, "Only the Christians care about us." One blind man stood and said, "I do not yet believe in Jesus, but please pray for me that I soon will." Because of the Buddhist teaching of karma, there's very little sympathy for the handicapped of Southeast Asia. Most of the relief work is done by Western nations or Christian organizations, and because of their caring, the gospel has spread rapidly among the afflicted. In fact, it's said that the gospel first came to Thailand in its leper colonies, where even today a great harvest is being reaped. As we left northern Thailand, we begin to understand that the greatest concentration of lame and lepers, of blind and deaf, live along the banks of the Chao Phraya River in the heart of Southeast Asia, the city of Bangkok.
As we concluded our journeys north, we entered into Bangkok, a city of more than 5 million people, 10% of the population of Thailand. Bangkok is a modern city of traffic, heat, and flooding during the rainy season. But beneath its veneer lies a city of contrasts. Life in this city is much like it was centuries ago. Street vendors abound on every street corner and sell their goods and produce as their families have done for generations. It is in Bangkok where most of the television and radio programs are broadcast from, which reach into all of Thailand and most of Cambodia, Laos, and even Vietnam. Unfortunately, many of our Western influences have left their mark on this city and society, as seen and heard in the sights and sounds of Patpong, the infamous nightclub district. We were mindful of these words of Jesus as we walked through Bangkok. And as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the Son of Man. Team member John Probst was left with this impression.
I felt like I was walking through a 20th century Sodom and Gomorrah, a place of open wickedness and idolatry which is unparalleled in Western culture.
Every international city in the world is noted for something, and Bangkok, like ancient Ephesus, is perhaps the most idolatrous city in the world. But it's also noted for something else, and that's a 4-block area named Patpong, where conservative figures estimate up to 3,000 people prostitute themselves daily. Originally, this was done because of the business provided by the American GI, but now it's just a carryover to the world-traveling tourist. Where do so many boys and girls come from? They come from 2 places. First of all, it's the legacy of the Vietnamese War, where estimates say between 50,000 and 200,000 children were fathered by American servicemen and left behind. They're called Amerasians, and in a racially conscious Asia, they have a hard time living. So often they turn to prostitution and other forms of crime. But these kids are also sold into what is called bonded labor. We call it slavery, where they're either placed in a factory or a mill working 15 hours a day and at night locked behind padlocked doors, being given a little bit of rice and fish to eat, or they're sold to a pimp for $50, where they sit behind a glass booth, where the tourist comes in and picks them according to a red numbered tag pinned to their clothing. And there for a few dollars, a man can buy a child to sleep with for the night. If you could see the looks on their faces, the helplessness in their eyes, the horror, as well as the hope that they won't be picked, but the realization also that they do have to earn a living. It's a sad thing to behold. But where do the rest of them live? They don't live in a penthouse, and they don't have nice homes to go to. They live like 1,100,000 other citizens of Bangkok in the slums, And it's there that we planted the seeds of the gospel. And its growth in a few short months has been absolutely phenomenal. Children are the same the world over. Friendly, giggly, and loving, even to strangers. The only difference is lifestyle and environment. These slum children live most of the year only inches above the floodwaters of the river. In the monsoon season, I've seen debris and sewage float inside their homes. During the dry season, the water subsides, unveiling the shabby sidewalks which connect one community with another. You can't help but wonder if Jesus would not walk these streets today if he were here bodily. And though he has commissioned his disciples and promised his presence and power, until this day when we preached, Jesus had never been proclaimed in any of the 1,020 slums in Bangkok. Over 1 million people living in houses smaller than a one-car garage and often less than 100 square feet like this one. And yet no one had ever come to tell them about God's love or heaven's mansions. Though we were warned not to preach the gospel, on this day we did. And over 100 accepted Christ. Their tiny congregation grew in 2 months to over 500 and had started 2 new ministries, reaching over 3,500 people each week with the gospel, like this mother and daughter who had never heard about Jesus and his love. But their poverty affects more than living conditions alone. Since there are no free medical services in Thailand, the poor go without medicine and treatment. Like the lepers, their maladies usually end with infection and then amputation or death. Those born disabled suffer not only the hindrances of their disability, but also the hopelessness of life without Christ. For no one has yet ventured into the other slums to tell the lame, the halt, or the blind, such as this 104-year-old blind lady about Jesus. But on this day, she heard for the first time about God's love.
We came to tell you about our Savior. His name is Jesus. And we have a song that says Jesus loves the little children. All the children of the world. You're precious in his sight.
In the past 30 minutes, we've tried to show you the burden that God has placed upon our hearts, and we hope that he's beginning to put it on yours as well. We'd like to demonstrate to you the reality of the fact that the world can be reached, and that we'd like to be a part of it. We've taken you to the borders of Laos to show you the refugees who fled communism. We've talked about Christians still suffering persecution. We've taken you into the villages of the Hill Tribe people who still to this day pray to demon spirits and to animals they believe to be reincarnated ancestors. We've gone down south and shown you the handicapped and the ministries with the blind and the lepers. We've taken you into the slums and talked with you about the plight of the unwanted children. We've also shown you the openness of the gospel by these people, which Buddhism offers so little to. While we were in Bangkok, we were able to learn about a studio that produces Christian broadcasting. Their success rate is so great that each week they average 7,000 requests from Buddhists, Muslim, and animists who write in wanting to receive more information about this man named Jesus. And it's so phenomenal because we've learned that they have a potential viewing audience of 10,000 people for every 1 cent spent in production costs. You know, when we traveled through Southeast Asia, we learned that there was no shortage of Christian workers and pastors willing to give the gospel out. The only shortage that remains is prayer and finances. And it's sad when you realize that a pastor can live on a monthly income of as little as $100. And that $1,200 could produce a 30-minute Christian television broadcast that would be beamed into all of Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, southern China, parts of Burma, Malaysia, and even Singapore, spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ to well over 100 million people, many of whom have never heard His name before. You know, if God is leading you to pray for us, we ask you to pray, and we ask you to do it today. And if God is burdening your heart to share with us in this ministry financially, we hope that you'll do that today as well. One of the missionaries of the past ages was asked once to comment upon world evangelism. He said, imagine Jesus about to feed the 5,000 and calling His disciples before Him and asking His Father to bless the food. His Father complied. The disciples were willing and eager to pass out the food in abundance. But suppose those disciples had picked up the baskets and gone only to the first few rows of the thousands of people there, and returned to get more food, and once again gone to the first, second, third row, and again until all the food was gone. The throngs would have gone away hungry that day, while a few would sit before them gluttonous. And that's exactly what we have in world missions to this day. Countries like America and Canada and Europe are engulfed in the gospel, when so much of the rest of the world has yet to hear the story of Jesus Christ and the love of His Father. And we hope that you'll help us take that message to them in the final frontiers of this earth. May God bless you richly as you do.
See the helpless children living as refugees. In their eyes I see suffering. Hear the voices crying, faces full of fear. Asia's children, they